Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, you sound like a robot. That's not a mouse. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. You sound like a robot. In my last post I mentioned a wide-ranging problem that affected most of our customers' TVs. We are an ISP that provides internet, TV, and landline telephones. The error lasted for a total of 4 days before we found the error and fixed it. My last story was about a customer I had during the error, who really didn't like the idea that I couldn't magically bring his TV back. This story is about a customer I had shortly after. This one isn't as detailed, because I didn't start writing it down until a couple of days after. The call started with the customer telling me he still had the error code problem, and asked why it wasn't fixed yet. I inform him that I haven't heard anything about it today, but if he is okay with being put on hold I can call over to the relevant department and check the status. He grumpily said okay. I called over and was told that it was solved during the night. If there is still a problem we should troubleshoot as usual. Got it. I returned to the customer to inform him about this. Okay, it seems like the large-scale issue is solved, so if there is still a problem we need to. That's how far I got before he interrupted me. He started screaming at me that I was a complete moron who clearly didn't know about my job. How could I possibly claim it was solved, when his TV still displayed the error code? After he calmed down I continued. If there still is a problem it is caused by something else, and we need to troubleshoot to find out what. According to the guy, troubleshooting was pointless because there was nothing wrong with his equipment. I should just send a technician. I calmly explained that I can send a technician if he wants to. But if I do that, and the error is something on the customer's side, the customer will have to pay for the technician. And besides, there is like a 3-day waiting time for any technician ever. You might get one in 2 days if you are lucky. So if can get his TV working right away, isn't that better? Before anyone says we should hire more technicians. We hire the same tech companies as every other ISP in the country. We literally have every single possible technician in the country on hand. We can't hire more. This was apparently an outrageous statement. And a threat, somehow. He was livid, stating that he wasn't going to pay a dime, and he shouldn't have to wait since he had been without a TV for so long. I pointed out that this is exactly why we troubleshoot before we send out a technician. To make sure the customer doesn't have to pay. He, again, begrudgingly accepted. My first question was simply, have you rebooted your TV box at any point since last night? Cue screaming and insults in line with of course I have? Do you think I am an idiot? So we spend a good 2 minutes on that instead of him just simply saying yes so we can move on. I continue to look up a few things as he berates me. Insults my intelligence. Accuses me of being bad at my job and blames me for the long queue. In hindsight I wished I had said something like, "Oh, you are right, I should start working on that queue," and then hung up. He then pointed out that making complaints to me is useless because nothing is going to get done about them anyway. Then why are you doing it? I respond that I can bring his complaints to my boss, however. Again he cuts me off to tell me that I am not going to bring his complaints to my boss. He was right though, I only do that for customers who aren't rude. His reason for knowing that though, was that he once worked tech support. And they never reported complaints to their boss. In other words, he sucked at his job, therefore I must suck too. Once he was done I got to end my sentence. However, I can't speak for what happens after that since it's then out of my hands. More yelling and insults, although this time directed at my boss and the company rather than me. A pleasant change of pace that did not last. I then had the audacity to ask if he could try another Ethernet cable to connect the box to the router. Why the hell would I do that? Well, error code XXX also indicates that there is something wrong with the connection between the TV box and the router. It's possible that something might be wrong with the cable. Unfortunately I, as the simpleton I am, I didn't know that Ethernet cables are apparently indestructible. And there can't possibly be something wrong with the cable. When I tried to say that there are several things that can be wrong with a cable, he just got more annoyed. Thus more name calling. A lot of people asked me on my last post why I don't just hang up on rude customers. I am actually allowed to do it. I'm just really stubborn and always try to get through. I am already dead inside, so nothing they say can affect me the slightest. I usually just zone out and look at Reddit or play some chess until they stop to breathe. If I do hang up, they are most likely just going to call in again and be even angrier at someone else, and they might not be as resilient as I am. I remain firm in saying that he should try another cable. He curses again and then starts working on something, as I hear more muffled curses. I assume he is changing the cables. Wrong. After a while he says, "Are you fixing my TV or not?" I ask if he has connected another cable, and he goes of the lid. I am apparently completely useless. Apparently my job isn't to help customers, it's to protect the company, remove all responsibility from them, and just blame all faults on the customers. Explaining that removing all possible faults that can be on the customer's side ensures that the technician is free for the customer was not a good enough of an explanation. Apparently technicians should always be free. During this latest rant I take a look at his router and notice that it hasn't had a factory reset in over 1,500 days. We recommend you do one around every 6 months or so. Every year at the least. I suggest a factory reset to the customer. He is still pissed, but slightly less pissed than when I suggested to switch cables. He did have another outburst when I told him that our routers take 15 minutes to reset. As if I made the router. But we have a system where our customers can send a text to a certain number, and we call them back at the first possible moment. I inform him of this and send him the relevant information. I tell him to wait 15 minutes and see if the TV is working. If it's not, he should use the text message I sent him. He finally accepts my suggestion, but with a caveat. If this reset doesn't fix the problem, and he needs a technician, like he said at the start, he was going to sue the company for wasting his time. And he was going to ask for me to get fired. I simply responded, "Well, let's hope this works then." Before I started the factory reset, I sent a command to the TV box to reboot. No idea if it went through, because the system doesn't tell me that. I then started the factory reset. The customer then made one final complaint. And believe it or not, it was his dumbest one yet. "You know, you sound like a robot when you talk. You should cheer up a little and be more friendly to customers." Honestly, if he can yell abuse at me for 40 minutes, and then the worst thing he can say about me is "you sound like a robot," I'd say I am pretty damn good at my job. To maintain neutrality in a situation like that as opposed to telling him stick a router where the sun don't shine. That takes some patience. This guy seemed completely oblivious to why I wasn't in a chipper mood. My parting words were a short "really," and then I finally hung up on him. Never heard from him again. Kept track of his customer ID and checked back 2 days later. No further logs and no technicians hired. Either the reset did the trick and it works, or he is currently working on his lawsuit against the company, which is totally going to work, and is definitely going to get me fired for following procedure. In hindsight, I really wished I had ended the call by saying, "Well, what can I say? Maybe next time you could try to be nice to people who are just trying to help you, instead of being rude and yelling insults constantly. You just might get different result that way. Have a nice day." I would definitely have been reported and probably reprimanded for saying that. But it would have been so worth it. Most likely my boss would just have given me a stern talking to while actually really understand why I said it. That's not a mouse. Hi all. I used to work at a prestigious private school that had a pretty big campus, approximately 45 acres, that was a hassle to get around. It also didn't help that the school was built on basically a cliff. Anyway, I get a phone call from one of our PDHPE teachers saying that her wireless mouse isn't working, and that I need to run over a couple new batteries for her ASAP. To make matters worse, she is preparing for a parent presentation, and she is upset this might make her look bad. So I grab the batteries and start the long jog over. Now I'm not athletic at all, so I was buggered by the time I arrived at the sports pavilion. I climb the stairs, my worst enemy, and enter the room huffing. She sees me and says, "Look, it's not working," moving the so-called mouse. Dumbfounded, I just stare at her in full deadpan mode and reply, "That's 'cause you are holding a whiteboard duster." It was at this moment that two things happened. The first was one of our technology teachers had just walked in and witnessed the spectacle. She was on the floor in hysterics, laughing her ass off. The second was I realized Holly from Red Dwarf was so right in his assessment of PE teachers. I found the wireless mouse, and it was working fine. I left the room and told no one what had happened, yet within an hour the whole school knew what had transpired. That PE teacher resigned a week later. I surely hope they have increased their IQ from 0.5, but it's unlikely. Thanks for taking the time to enjoy this post.